It's a special farewell episode this week as ChannelPro's Colleen Frye, Joel Zaidspiner, and Michael Siggins join to reminisce and share some stories about a departing ChannelPro Weekly friend moving off to new adventures. It's ChannelPro Weekly number 258. Farewell, Johnny Appleseed of the channel. Hello and welcome to ChannelPro Weekly episode number 258. My name is Matt Whitlock, technology editor, online director, and your host of this show. Who's the show for? I always forget. This is the show for VARs, MSPs, IT integrators, managed services. I said MSPs, didn't I? Managed security services providers, MSSPs. There's also system builders. There's compliance folks. In general, if you do anything IT solutions related with other businesses, you are probably in the right place. If you like to hear people talk, well, this is a good place to be too, because we do a lot of talking here, because it wouldn't be much of a podcast if we weren't talking. So welcome one and all. Also welcome to the program, someone who's joined us week to week here on ChannelPro Weekly is executive editor Rich Freeman.
Well, hello, Matt, and hello to our listeners and viewers.
Yeah, they're all here to hear talking. Do you think we'll be able to provide that today?
We've done a pretty good job of it for what, 257, 258 episodes. We've got a streak going. So yeah, I like our odds.
We do have a good streak going. Now, this is going to be kind of an unusual episode here for our ChannelPro Weekly listeners and viewers. And why is that? Well, this is actually, depending on when this goes out, might be of a shock to some of you. Some of you might have heard, but didn't know directly what was going on. But, well, in short, after 16 wonderful years at ChannelPro, our very own man of the hour, the guy who keeps the trains running on time, well, he's going to be kind of putting his timer clock thing. What do you use to keep trains running on time with? Is it a clock, a stopwatch? I don't know.
Let's call it a stopwatch.
Let's call it a stopwatch. But whatever he is, it's going back into the equipment closet because he's going to be stepping down as executive editor to pursue new adventures in the channel. Of course, we are sad. We wish him well in those endeavors, of course. And what we are pleased to say that even though the executive editor title is going, and he's going to be kind of stepping down in that major role, he's getting a new title here at ChannelPro, founding editor, and he's going to remain part of the family here, kind of as a part-time contributor of news and vendor event coverage. He's not disappearing completely, but he is stepping away from the full-time day-to-day role. And that would include his weekly role here that he has on ChannelPro Weekly. So this will be our last episode with co-host Rich Freeman. That's kind of sad to say.
It is for me too. And so here is I'm realizing the challenge for me now through the end of the episode is to get through this without getting too emotional, because it is an emotional thing for me to be, like you said, I'm not disappearing, and I'm not exiting ChannelPro completely and forever and so on. But I won't be kind of there every day either. And I have been there a long time, and it's got this huge place in my heart and always well. So yeah, it definitely an emotional occurrence, but also for me, kind of exciting to be trying something new.
Yeah, I mean, 16 years is a long time for sure to be involved in a project. Now, you weren't full-time for that entire duration of 16 years, because I remember you stepped on full-time after I had started here. And I had started here, I want to say in 2011 or 2012. I think it was 2012. Yes, 2012. So when did you now? So explain a little bit of your history, so this will be kind of interesting for folks to learn. So explain a little bit of your history with ChannelPro, because you were roped in from day one, and then when were you full time?
So our mutual boss, the publisher president, the guy who runs ChannelPro, is a gentleman who we hope will be joining us maybe later on this show, named Michael Siggins. And I've known Michael for 20 years probably at this point. When I was back in marketing at Microsoft, he was a vendor to me, and then I left Microsoft, became a freelance writer, and I was like a vendor to him. I was doing writing for him. He was working at this publishing house called IDG at the time, and then he called me up like November 2006 and said that he and some other people were creating this new magazine called ChannelPro, And that's what they had basically at that time, Matt. They had a name and a logo and a mission statement that Michael and I subsequently rewrote. I mean, nothing. It was an idea and a name. And so Michael and me and our longtime art director, Dave Law, we just sat down day after day after day in front of, blank pieces of paper and created a magazine. And it started coming out March of 2007. And I had the opportunity to go full time at that point and be the executive editor of the publication, but I'd been building my own kind of book of business on the side. And one of the great impressive things about ChannelPro is we are going super strong all these years later. If you think back to what was going on in the publishing industry and the economy in 2007, it just felt like a risky bet basically for me. And so I was part-time until 2016. The very beginning of 2016 is when I became a full-time employee of the company and have been ever since.
Yeah, and it's funny that you mentioned 2016, because that is also the year where actually ChannelPro Weekly began. The history of the show is kind of funny because Rich, I was looking at the calendar. I was looking at our first recording date, which was March 10th of 2016. I don't know when the actual episode actually went out, but that was when we recorded it. So we're coming up on 7 years of just ChannelPro Weekly, which is crazy to think about it. Now, I know the history, in the history of the show, we've had some periods where we've had some breaks where we weren't recording for a while, and things get busy, and we are, especially when our events business kind of exploded, it made it difficult to be regular for a while. But we have been pretty regular the last 2 or 3 years. We've been pretty much on top of things. So, Rich, why don't you tell us a little bit of the history of just how ChannelPro Weekly got started?
You more than anyone at ChannelPro are responsible for that. The funny thing is, when we launched the show, I barely have ever listened to podcasts. And now it feels like that's almost all I listen to. I have a Spotify subscription, and I will listen to music sometimes, but I've become this big podcast aficionado. But I didn't know the first thing about podcasts when we started the show. And you got in touch with me and with Celia, who was our first executive editor at the magazine, and just kind of roped us in. We're gonna do a podcast. And as far as I was concerned, it was like, okay, I don't understand what this is, and we didn't have a format fully baked or anything. It's just like, I'll show up once a week and we'll kind of see how this goes. And yeah, that's just kind of how things launched. And I am both curious and I cringe at the thought of going back and listening to those first few episodes when we were just kind of figuring out how to do this.
Yeah, the first episode was a little rough because of some technical issues with microphones, but they're not bad. The funny thing about ChannelPro Weekly is the news obviously is old, but some of the discussions and conversations and interviews we have really last and are almost timeless. So it's still fun to go back and listen to some of those. But yeah, the history, I am kind of responsible for this particular podcast, and I've been a podcast listener for a long time. That's pretty much all I listen to when I'm out and about. So if I'm pretty much known when I get in the car, when I'm going for a walk, when I'm on the treadmill. Sometimes I'll watch, TV or whatever, but most of the time when I'm doing anything where I can just passively listen, I've got an earpiece in my ear and I'm listening to always something. And the history of this show came about because I love podcasts, and I've always wanted to do one. I did one at my last job that I had before this. It was a very brief thing. I'm not even going to say the name of it. It does hold up, but it wasn't the kind of podcast that I wanted to do. And I remember that at the time that you were certainly getting towards the 2015, you were definitely getting much more back involved in a lot of the day-to-day calls. And I remember that you and Cecilia and I would often just stay on after we had our group discussions, and we would just talk about stuff. And it was always really insightful and interesting, and we'd have these really great discussions. And I thought, well, why don't, this could be a podcast, right? These just interesting discussions about the news or whatever's going on. Because the three of us, again, referring to Cecilia Galvin, who started the show with us back in 2016, we had just a great rapport and a great dynamic. And I wanted to capture that. So you're right. I roped you and Cecilia. Both of you had no idea what podcasting was or had any idea how it worked. But I said, basically, what we're going to do is we're going to get on, we're going to have a conference call between the three of us, and we're going to record it. And we'll have a little bit of stuff around it. And that'll be kind of the show. And it really worked. So the show has kind of now gone through two eras. It's gone through the first era with well, there was the audio era and then the video era, because the first 100 episodes we did of the show were only available in audio form. I didn't have a lot of interest doing a video podcast, but when we kind of changed how we did stuff, it was like, well, we can add video, and we do have some viewers out there, and it's great that'll watch on YouTube. But most of our audience is still on audio, given the length of the show. That it certainly makes sense. And I'm a passive podcast listener. That was what I wanted to create, is something that you can consume kind of while you do other things. So there's the audio area, and then the video era, and then we've also had the era of where it was you, me, and Cecilia. And I remember we didn't really have a lot of guests in the early episodes. It really was just more the three of us, if I remember correctly. Did we have a lot of did we really do any interviews back then?
We did not have interview guests, and it would be interesting to know when we first started doing that. But what would happen is I was constantly out on the road for ChannelPro, attending events and so on, and I would interview vendor executives and MSPs and people like that. And so that the equivalent of what is today the interview segment was usually like an excerpt from something I had recorded while I was interviewing some CEO somewhere. So we would air that recorded bit, and then the three of us would kind of talk about it.
That's right. We had the recorded interviews of just you that we would kind of slip in there, and yeah, and that was really good. And I'm looking back through some of our old notes, and we had talked a lot about a lot of stuff. Here you had an interview with Tim Conkle in episode 2. Yeah, it was a really cool era for the podcast. And unfortunately that era came to an end when Cecilia Galvin passed away. Which was a rough time for all of us. I think we took a break from the show for a little while after that and kind of retooled. And then the new era of ChannelPro Weekly was born. And so you and I stayed on to do the show. And what we did I always knew that we needed 3 to make a good dynamic. And so what we would do is we did a lot of episodes where it was just you and me, but we kind of fell into this format where we would get a guest host, which would be like a channel partner from the channel, someone who runs an MSP or whatever. And or like, Manuel Palachuk, like a business coach, or Carl Palachuk. And we'd have a guest host that would kind of join with us. And then we ended up doing a lot of live interviews. So we kind of ended up with this 3-part episode where we'd have, news and topics and discussion with a guest, interview, and then kind of like a fun game at the end. And that was what the show was for a long time. I would say a very long time. Rich, I want to kind of get your thoughts. What were some of your thoughts on the history? What parts did you like about kind of the evolution of the show?
Well, I mean, it's funny because as you're talking about it, I realize how different these different little periods, these different phases in the history of the show were. I've enjoyed all of them, and just for different reasons. I do remember and miss that special kind of conversational dynamic among you and me and Celia, and just the weird, totally non-IT tangents we would go down about goats and pets and just all sorts of weird things that we would find ourselves talking about. And that, and that kind of element has sort of lingered since, basically, that you tune in to learn some interesting stuff about what's happening in the channel, but also to kind of hang out. I assume people are tuning in to kind of hang out with the hosts a little bit as they just hang out with each other. So that, that's been great. I've really enjoyed the dynamic of having that different guest host in each week, and somebody, very often from the cover of the magazine and so on, and that element that they add to the conversation and the input, because you and I have perspectives on whatever's happening in the news, but it's not the same as an MSP's perspective that's affecting them kind of directly. So we have evolved, that we've rolled with the changes and evolved through the years, and it's always just, for me, it's always just been a blast.
It has been a blast, and we've done a lot of good things with this show. I think one of the highlights that the show's kind of developed to is one, Rich. I mean, I've said this before on the episode. If anyone has missed it, it's worth repeating. You are probably one of the most skilled interviewers I've ever met. And one of the great things that has come out of this show that hopefully we can keep going as time goes on, but we've had some really amazing guest interviews on this show. So what I wanted to do was pick your brain a little bit to have you think back of maybe some of the guests that we've had that have really stood out to you, and some of your favorite interview moments, because we've had a lot of big names on this show over the years.
Yeah, boy. I mean, it would be hard. I remember there was the time that we had Christoph Schell, who was he was the chief commercial officer at HP at the time. He's since moved on. And I should know this, and I'm blanking. I think he's at SAP now, but I'm not certain about that. But he was on with us twice actually on the show, and I remember that before that first appearance, I had been thinking to myself, I wonder if we could get so-and-so who kind of reported into him at the time. And then out of the blue, HP's PR folks reached out to me and said, hey, would you like to have Christoph on the, and it was like, yes, actually, we would. He ran sales and marketing and partner program and everything worldwide for them at the time. We had him on a couple of different times. Just not only a really interesting conversation, but he's just a lot of fun to have on a show like this. And we haven't even talked about 5 questions and the games and all that that we played, but he played that with us, and we had a great time. So both those interviews were great. I know we're both gonna think immediately of the interview that we did in 2020, I believe, with David Friend, who is the CEO of Wasabi Technologies, cloud storage business that recently became, I believe, a unicorn. By the way, they're doing very, very well at Wasabi, but we had him on when the company was a little bit younger there, and he could not be more fascinating. It's like I just wanted to talk, me being me, I wanted to talk about cloud and cloud storage and all this stuff. And he comes on to the Zoom meeting with us in his office, and it's like there are all these rare gems and collectibles from around the world behind him, and he's explaining what that's all about. And he ran earlier in his career. Yet some people might know that before Wasabi, he was one of the very top executives at Carbonite. Before that, like in the 1970s, he ran a company that made synthesizers. So a lot of your favorite rock and roll music from the 1970s feature synthesizers made by this company, and then one of them appeared in the movie Close Encounters of the Third. He just had the most incredible stories, and we got into cloud and storage too, but it couldn't have been a more interesting conversation.
That was one of the ones that comes to my mind first. That was probably one of my favorite interviews that we've ever done, and it was like super fascinating. I'll say I always liked it when we've had John Pagliuca on. He's the CEO of Enable. He's always been a really interesting interview guest to have on the show. I will say there's just been so many. It's hard to get them all straight. One that's maybe not a big one at a vendor company, but I really enjoyed the interview that we did with James Carroll, who's been on stage with us and been a part of some of our events since then. But I've always found him to be a super duper fascinating guy. Oh, Rich, who are some of the other ones that we've had on that have been really good that we could point people back to?
I wish I had prepared for that question. I'm sure that there are great ones that we're not thinking about.
We did one with Gary Pica at one point. That was a good one. That was in 2021 episode. Let me look that up. That was a really good one.
That I remember that I was at the and he and I were both at this Kaseya event. Yeah, that would be late 2021.
Yeah, that was episode 203. That was a really good one. We could start really going back in time, but there's been so many. but you know, rather than trying to go into too much on specific interviews, it certainly has been one of the more highlights and wonderful parts of this show is that we've been able to talk to so many different people in the channel at positions, you know, again, like see a lot of CEOs, presidents, make the time to come on and talk to us, which I think has been kind of a nice part of the show that we've had. And something that I've always looked forward to each and every week, because just to listen to you interview people. If anybody has noticed, like a lot of times the format of our interviews kind of go like, I ask a lot of questions. I kind of set up the interview and I ask questions about their personal life and, you know, try to get to know a little bit more about them. And then usually in the background, I'm, you know, sending a note over to Rich. Just as soon as my questions are done, I just say over to you, Rich, and I just let you do your thing because you're like just a great interviewer. Is that a skill that you've always had, or is that like something that you developed here over time?
No, I would say I definitely developed it here over time. I mean, I started developing it when I was freelancing, even before ChannelPro was born. You know, if you are researching articles for a living, you do a lot of interviewing, and yeah, I just over time have kind of learned how to get into it with people, what to ask, and so on.
And it's been clear as day. It's always been great to listen to. Now, I also, yeah, I don't want to drag too much on history, but I like to point out that one of the other things that has been really fun about Channel Pro Weekly is from the very beginning, we've had the funny show titles, right? From the very beginning. That was when as soon as we went into this, I didn't know a lot about how I wanted to format the show or exactly what I wanted to do with the show. But from the very beginning, I knew that I wanted really funny, weird, catchy show titles. And that's something that stuck through all the way up until this episode. From episode number 1 until this episode, we have had, you know, these clever show titles. And so Rich, tell people how we come up with these. I'll let you tell the story because I want to have you talk as much as possible.
Well, I'll just take people behind the scenes in general. So before we ever record a show, usually a few weeks before we record a show, I'll think, okay, who should the guest host be on that episode, and who do I want on as an interview guest, and so that, you know, there's like booking all of that, and then you and I, while we're recording, are always looking at a show sheet that sort of spells out what we're going to be talking about and in what order, and so on. I, you know, to the consternation of many people, I always create those. It's like the last thing I do the night before we record, basically. So sometimes guest hosts will be contacting me days in advance. Can you tell me what we're going to be talking about so I can prepare? Which is a very natural, understandable thing to ask. And the answer is always no, because I'm not going to know myself until about 9 p.m. Pacific time, you know, on Wednesday, but I'll send you the links then. And, you know, so yeah, so then I kind of, you know, whatever, organize the show notes. And then and now I've already forgotten my train of thought. How did I get there? What were you? I was going to.
So we were talking about how where the show titles come from.
Oh yeah. So that's what all happens before the show is made. When we're done, and Matt says, "Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week." We stop the recording, and then he and I and the guest host will stay on the line and agree on a show title, which by that point, Matt and I have been like jotting down ideas during the show in that sort of show sheet that I had set up the night before. Somebody says something wacky, or one of us has an idea. We'll go in there and we'll kind of type down this weird thing. And then we'll go through the list, and among the three of us, we'll vote on whichever one is going to be the show title.
Yeah, and they've always the show titles have always been something that it relates to something in the show. And I know we've had a few listeners that we've talked to, we've met in person at our events, where like they have fun trying to figure out where in the show a show title came from. And sometimes it's at the very beginning, sometimes it's at the very end. It just depends on what we ultimately landed on. But during the show sheet that we use is kind of in like synchronized, so we're both seeing each other type stuff in the show sheet as we are coming up with ideas. And we know we're onto a good one when like somebody says something and Rich and I put basically the exact same show title in at the exact same time, which has happened. And we're like, oh, that's probably the one we're going to end up using because we both like that one. But it's been kind of a staple of the show, something that will ultimately continue on. But what I wanted to ask you, Rich, is it because you've been a part of pretty much all of them, shy of a few times when you've been on vacation. What have been, say, your top 3 favorite show titles that we've had?
And the funny thing is, I honestly had the thought earlier today I should go back and because this will come up, and I should, and now I don't know. I'm just randomly looking at show titles that we've done to see if anything. All cyber insurance will be Taco Bell.
That's a good one. That's a good one. One of the more interesting ones that is not quite as funny unless you actually listen to the show to hear it, but I liked the one where it was greetings from the New Hampshire Chamber of Commerce.
Yes, that was just.
I remember when we said all that, we're like, I'm not even sure if that one's gonna fit, but we made it work. I really liked that one. I'll let you poke through and see if you can kind of come up with any of your other favorites. I liked Iguanas in the Ghost Shell. That one was pretty good. Plan 9 from Planet Zeebs.
So here's one that gets into a a memory of the show. Episode 162 was titled "The Exer Rich."
Yes. Yeah, let's explain that one, because that one is really funny, and I might even pull a video clip of this and insert that there. So what happened in episode 162?
And I gotta preface this by saying I like to think I am good at many things. I am terrible at lighting and audio, and we've 250 some odd episodes. I still haven't figured this stuff out. So there are other episodes where weird things happen involving either my video or my audio. But on that particular show, if I remember right, in the middle of the episode, there was some Zoom glitch where everything sounded totally normal to me, and I'm just kind of droning on about some story in the news. And you and I it was Josh Weiss, who was our guest host, that the two of you were looking at me funny and then laughing because all of a sudden my audio changed and my voice dropped like super low, right? Isn't that what happened on that episode?
Yeah, your whole octave and voice changed. It was actually kind of creepy. So we had that one, and that was a really funny one. Where you were prematurely, or temporarily possessed by demon spirits on the show, which was a good one.
None of the concerns that can go along with any of that. The thing about this product that is most interesting to addition to the platform that I at least haven't come across elsewhere. I don't know if there are other products that have this, and I mean other cloud management products. But they've added some functionality to the system that allows you a lifetime license to the product for as long as the product exists, plus 3 years, basically.
So, Rich, I think the real story here, and I want to get your comments on this, Josh, but I think the real story here is that Rich has just been taken over by a demon, and we need to call an exorcist immediately. So for those listening and watching, Rich, you have not picked up on this yet, but at some point there was a pause, and your voice is now a whole octave lower than what it was before. Yeah. And I have Josh sending me chat messages like, his voice has changed, and I'm like, it did. I think he's possessed.
That's pretty cool, Rich.
So
a new tool, a new technology that we could discuss.
So either you have been possessed by a demon, or you have just hit your second stage of puberty. It's one of the two.
And this is still ongoing?
It's still ongoing. So why don't you drop, and I will get Josh's thoughts on the Lynx's story, and we'll see if you can go and excise the demon upon your return.
But I just want to check before I go. I mean, do I just have a deep voice? Like, should I be doing an NFL promotion right now or something like that? Or?
Yeah. Why don't you go ahead and say something like Sunday, come down for the monster truck rally.
A monster truck rally.
Sunday. Oh my gosh. All right. There was another episode, and I want to go back and find it. I'll see if I can pull a clip of that one. There was another really good one where There's two of these I can think of that we'll talk about. One was we named the episode something about a hostage video. So there was this one episode where something happened to his camera somewhere along the line in the episode, and the video quality like looked like it was some kind of like hostage video from terrorists in, you know, the Middle East somewhere, holding Rich as a hostage and making the ransom demands. So that was do you remember what episode that was?
Other than the fact that my light has gone out here for those of you watching on
I thought you were descending into an alternate universe or something.
Yeah. Well, this is going to be a treat for those of you who are watching on YouTube. Talk about hostage videos. You're seeing one right now here, basically. But, I don't. That was a little while ago. There's another one I think you're going to mention that was just last year, but that one was further back, 2019, 2020.
Yeah, so that was episode 182 with Amy Babinchek. And that was I try to remember when in the episode that happened, but it was like really, really funny when it happened. And all of us on the call were just laughing our heads off because Rich sounded so weird. But yeah, there was one that was last year, and it was you were in a hotel room and like there was a window in front of you or something, and the way the lighting was is it was like the sun was really bright or something, and your video kept getting blown out and it was like turning white around you. Explain what happened.
No, that's exactly it. You know, and so when I do the show from home, my home office, as I'm doing it now, I've got, you know, lights that I can set up, and I still get it wrong, you know, as often as I get it right. But when I'm on the road, I've done a lot of these shows from hotel rooms, and it's just really difficult to control the lighting. And the thing that I've kind of learned to do that works best, maybe not well, but best, is to sort of set myself up facing the window in the hotel room, because then there's even light kind of coming at me. But on this particular show, for whatever reason, I had the settings such that it just kept getting bleached out until by the end of the episode, it's like anytime you see me on the video, literally it's just like these two eyes in a white field.
It looks like a ghost, right? So the best part though is we were on with Mike Bloomfield. I finally found the episode. It was Casper the Friendly Editor, episode 237. I'll absolutely put this in there.
And Rich, I gotta say, you are now completely blending with the wall.
Yeah. It's basically just two eyes in a field of nothing long time. So there are a lot fewer question marks, and so that can be kind of a shortcut to a merger that could then create a bigger company that might command a bigger multiple on the private equity market. And I'm feeling so much less lonely in my whitewashed universe than I did just minutes ago.
Yeah. Well, we didn't want you to seem too alone over there, so we've decided to join you for a few minutes in the angelic world of the near afterlife. And Mike's joining in the fun too.
I activated the Logitech Bright Light, and this seemed like the perfect color temperature for my body.
For those who are listening, what happened was so by the time we get to the spot in the interview, Rich is it's all white with two eyeballs, right? As he said, and he looks like he's like a spirit going on to the nether realm. And so Mike and I adjust our cameras at one point in the episode, so that way like we try to bleach ourselves out too. And Rich just like starts laughing as Mike and I are doing this. And it was great. It was one of those things that like having Mike Bloomfield on for that episode was perfect. And it was a really great memory. A couple other good. Rich, I'm going to open it up to you. What are just a couple other great ChannelPro Weekly memories that you'd like to share with our listeners and viewers?
Oh boy. You know, so I remember we attempted to record part of an episode at one of ChannelPro's events once, I want to say in 2019, and that was sort of a mixed bag. Trying to think of unusual. So I did one episode of the show. This was right at the beginning of 2020, like weeks before the pandemic kind of set in, like January 2020. I was recording from a hotel in Santa Barbara with my good friend, our good friend Eric Simpson of ericsimpson.com, and I co-host a different podcast with him. And we were seated outside, and I just remember there were like helicopters and planes circling overhead throughout that. I don't know. I'll just tell this story though, just so people kind of understand why I wax nostalgic and do get just a little emotional as we kind of do our final show here. Is all of us at ChannelPro, it is a lean organization that covers a lot of ground, and so everybody has lots and lots of different things on their plate all the time and is kind of scrambling. And as longtime listeners and viewers know, this is not the shortest podcast that you listen to. So it takes a 2-hour hunk or more out of our day to record this every week. And so for me, Matt, I don't know about you, but I have had the same experience over and over again, week after week, where it's Thursday morning for me, and I know that the podcast is coming up, and it's going to be 2 hours of talking. And for an introvert, that is an exhausting prospect. And I'm going to have to cut away from all these other time sensitive things that I'm doing. So there's always this sort of feeling of, well, let's just get this out of the way. And then 20 seconds after we start recording, I'm just having the time of my life. I genuinely am. And I can honestly say, pretty much every week that we've done this show, it's been the best 2 hours of my week. Truly. I mean, it's just so much. It's fun. It is interesting to do. Introversion aside, I just enjoy conversing with it's the same thing every week. You'd think I would learn my lesson at some point, but I never really did.
It is always the highlight of my week, and it has been. Again, if going back in time, like I said, I always wanted to do a long form podcast like this, and so this was always kind of a dream come true for me in a sense. But it is a lot of work, and I know that, and you do a little bit of the work up front. I have to do a lot of the post work to kind of get it up and running. But it's always been something that I've looked forward to every week and never wanted to miss. And it's been, and I'm glad to hear you say that too, because I know it was like that for you. I also know when Cecilia was doing the podcast with us a long time ago, we were told by her husband that it was like the best time of her life. And but right before every episode, she would be, closing doors and getting things ready. Like, oh, it's almost podcast time. It's almost podcast time. So I know that she really, really enjoyed this. And I'm glad that the 2 hours that we've spent each and every week has been something that you've found enjoyable as well. And I know it was for her for sure. So I lost my note. I was going to move on to something, but yeah, it has been fun. I don't know what else to say about it, but this has been great. I'm certainly going to miss doing it with you. We'll get into kind of what's going to happen with the show when we get towards the end of the episode. We'll talk a little bit about that, but like I said, this is going to be the end of an era that we had of you on the show week to week, and of the banter, because the history of the show was to get these conversations, and it's changed a little bit over the years, but the core is still there, and that was you and me talking news and doing that kind of stuff. I'll kind of kick it back to you as well if there's any other podcast moments that you'd like to share. I know we talked about a couple of them. I do want to point out and get your thoughts on these. We've done 2 extravaganza episodes over the years. We did a New Year's special a few years ago, and then I think it was just this last year we did like a holiday kind of special where we would invite back every guest host on the episode. And the funny thing is, when we got to these episodes, this ties into something you said, that people have had fun, is because we've had a lot of guest hosts, we've had a lot of returning guest hosts, and we've heard from them as well that we get to the end of the episode and we're saying, oh, thanks for so much for spending the time with us, and they're always like, I had a blast. Like, it was 2 hours, but it was like the time always flies. We never even realize how long we're going, but they always say that they had a great time. And it would be amazing how many of them would come back and want to come back and do more and more. And I remember when we were doing these holiday episodes and we were sending out invites, how many people were a part of the show in a given year. What are some of your thoughts on that?
Well, I as you were saying that, I was thinking I never, there's not a single time I can think of where I went back to a guest host and re-invited them to do another show later on, and they weren't interested, or like everybody kind of wants to come back who's done it, and most of them, it's a very similar thing. So sometimes a guest host will have on the show for the first time, they have a podcast of their own, or they've been a guest on somebody else's podcast. But for a lot of people, it's the first time they've done something like this. And there's always a certain very understandable degree of apprehension, because they haven't done it before and they don't know what it's going to be like. And it feels like show business, and I'm not in show business, and so on. And to a man and woman, basically, when they're done, it was like, well, that wasn't hard at all. That was just hanging out with you guys and talking. And yeah, that's just kind of universally been the experience. And you're right, it's reflected in the fact that last year, I remember we did the holiday show in December, but I sent the invites out to a year's worth of guest hosts the day before Thanksgiving. And to my astonishment, I mean, within an hour, most of the people had, written back and said, yes, I'm in, count me in, looking forward to it, it'll be fun. So that's kind of a nice legacy for the show too, is that it's not only we hope been useful, interesting, fun content for the audience, but even just the people we've kind of roped into the circus with us have really enjoyed it enough to want to do it more than once.
And it's a lot. If you go back through the episode list and you see the guest hosts, we've had a lot of returning ones. Like Carl Palachuk has done many shows with us. Manuel Palachuk has done a bunch. Dave Seibert's done a bunch of shows with us. But it's a lot of people that have been kind of in the ChannelPro Weekly family that have done these with us. And boy, I mean, of course, a big thanks to you, Rich, for coming on week to week to do this. But also a shout out to everyone else that has joined over the years and been a part of the show, because we couldn't have done it without all of them as well. And it's really built something special. You get to see a lot of new faces and new voices and new hosts all the time. So we're almost out of time for this segment. We're gonna come on and we're gonna have some ChannelPro colleagues on to share some stories and share some of their experiences. But one thing that I wanted to ask you is that you've done a lot of travel for ChannelPro. You've done a lot of things other than the ChannelPro network events that we put on. What have been some of your favorite events that you've covered out there as you've gone around the country and kind of the world in some cases to cover events? What have been some of your favorites?
Well, I could cite a ton for different reasons. So first of all, we're going to be talking with our mutual buddy Joel Zaidspiner later in the show, and he, like this week, is in Cancun, Mexico, attending Nerdio's annual event, and I got to go to that last year. That was not bad, actually. That's a funny story. We'll talk with our mutual boss Michael Siggins later in the show. But I was going on whatever 35 trips a year, booking my own travel for year after year after year. And we have a travel system that we use here, and if you spend over X dollars, accounting has to approve the ticket and so on. And for 6 or 7 years, no one ever argued with anything that any ticket that I bought. When I bought the ticket to go to this event in Cancun, they immediately wrote to Michael and were like, is this right? Are you sending an employee to is that a business expense? And Michael wrote me, and yeah, well, is this a business expense? Yes. And I explained what that was. So I mean, that was great, right? I got to go to Cancun. The company now known as Enable SolarWinds MSP, they did events in London and Edinburgh that Joel and I went to. That was an amazing experience. The events that I love for my very own nerdy journalist kind of reason, which is like CompTIA ChannelCon and DattoCon and IT Nation and the Ingram Micro Cloud Summit. I love these events where everybody I want to talk to is all there at once, and I can just book myself into way too many meetings with way too many people and then have to write way too much stuff. But for me, it's just great because I get to sit down face to face with all these people in a 2 to 3 day span. So those are all events that I've really enjoyed year after year.
Yes, and for those who tune into ChannelPro Weekly week after week, Rich got to rub that Cancun trip in our faces for several weeks after you went on that one. But yeah, but you spent a lot of time on the road for us, and I know we're going to talk to Joel and Michael and Colleen about some of that as well. But I hope the listeners here can appreciate and reminisce and thinking back to some of the moments that we've had here on the show, and hopefully we can put some of those clips in, and we'll do maybe some highlights at some point here as well. But it's going to be something that I miss doing with you week to week. But I'll have a question for you after we get on the other side of the break. So why don't we do that? Why don't we take a break? We're going to have Colleen Frye and Joel Zaidspiner join us. We're going to talk to them, get their thoughts, and share some stories. So stick with us as we kind of go through this farewell episode with Rich Freeman. We will be right back. And we are back now with a part 2 of this farewell episode. We've got a couple of our esteemed colleagues joining us for this particular segment in order to I don't know, give Rich a hard time, try to convince him not to go. I don't know. We'll just have to see what they have to say. But otherwise, we've all known Rich a long time, so I'm sure we'll all have some interesting stories and things to talk about and some reactions. So joining us on this segment, please welcome managing editor Colleen Frye.
Hello, Matt. Hello, Rich.
Always great to have you make an appearance on the show, Colleen. Wonderful to have you here. And someone who has not been on the show in a long time.
Years.
It's been a while, Mr. Joel Zaidspiner. Now, Joel, what is you are the associate publisher and
vice president, associate publisher, and AKA the mayor of the channel these days.
Mayor of the channel. I see that's a more regal and you can't get better than mayor of the channel. So you are the mayor of the channel. So first, for those of our listening audience that may not have caught a previous episode with you or know either one of you, Colleen, tell us a little bit about you.
Okay, well, I know Joel likes to call himself the mayor of the channel, but I secretly call myself the word queen. So I am the managing editor. I edit, I write, I do events, I moderate, a little bit of Jack or Jill of all trades, if you will.
Awesome. Wonderful to have you here. And Joel, tell us a little bit about what the mayor of the channel does and how many proclamations you have to make every week.
Well, I travel every week for ChannelPro. The ChannelPro network is part of my family. It's part of my everyday, my way I think, the way I breathe. ChannelPro network.com is who we are. I represent our publication on the road every day, whether it's through advertising programs, editorial with Rich and with all of you, and doing voice of the vendor for our readers to get a little bit of what's going on with vendors on the road. So we've continuously, helped our readers, but I'm here because I'm here for the readers. That's what I'm here for, and for you guys to make sure that we are the best things that we could possibly be for the channel. So thank you all. And they call me the mayor of the channel. I didn't choose it. I've been given a plaque, a certificate of it by some vendors in the industry.
That's a pretty cool feat. Now, you're also the one person that I actually think rivals or beats Rich in terms of travel in a given calendar year. I also think that your particular travel itinerary can affect the stock price of Delta Airlines. Is that correct?
That is correct. I'm on a flight 4 to 6 times a week, and 4 to 6 airplanes a week, and I try to fly Delta as a diamond flyer. This way, just like on an instant, I can get on a flight. Like last week, this week I got to the airport and I said, "Hey, can I go to an earlier flight?" And the woman looks at me and she goes, "Diamond, yes, no problem." Put me right up front and flew me here in seconds. But it's a lot of work to travel as much as we do. Rich and I have been on the road quite a bit over the years, and I think last year I did 40 weeks on the road last year during the weekdays. Yeah.
40 weeks. And Rich, how many weeks did you put in last year?
So if I'm remembering right, I went to 30-ish events, most of which were in different weeks. So it would probably be somewhere between 25 and 30 weeks on the road last year.
Wow, it's amazing thing. Now, Colleen, you don't get out and travel all that much outside of our shows, but you go to a couple things, right?
I do. I travel occasionally. Yep. I would not want to be on the road 40 weeks though. I don't think my dog would survive. He would
Well,
he
just-
would pine away and miss me. He already whines every time I leave.
So just with our events, I know last year it was 6 weeks, so you probably were probably 8 to 10
Yeah.
on the road. I don't go out on the road too much beyond our own events, so I was probably 6. Well, 8 this year, I guess, since we were doing 8 live shows. So it's a lot of good travelers. So Colleen, I'll turn it over to you. Let's get reaction, right? I mean, you've known Rich a long time, and you know we have to say goodbye. What was your reaction? What's your response?
And pretend I'm not here, by the way.
Well, that's not fair. Well, disbelief, because I still owe Rich the best cannoli in the north end of Boston. He stayed here a few days extra after our event in the Boston area last year. My husband and I took him into the north end to get, great Italian food, and I promised him that after dinner that we would go to Mike's Pastry, which is the world's best, cannoli. And the line was so long we bailed. So Rich, you can't leave yet because, you haven't got your cannoli.
Well, trust me, I'm going to come to Boston and collect on that. And we had a memorable cannoli experience that night anyway, which we won't get into. But I mean, we wound up at a different restaurant, which was owned and operated by an Italian couple with a lot of attitude. And
a lot of attitude. That's half Boston, half Italian. Yeah.
Joel, what about you? What was your reaction? What did you think?
Don't leave me, Rich. I was so sad to hear that you were going to retire from ChannelPro, and I was devastated for probably 4 days. And then I woke up one morning and I said, "Oh, you know what? I won't have to see Rich anymore on the road. I'll now have to work more." So then I realized it'll just be more work. So I'm sad that you're leaving. I'm very sad, and got plenty of stories about Rich. So I'm ready. I'm ready to knock some out of the park. So let me know when we're ready. But no, it's very sad. I don't owe Rich anything, I don't think. But Rich, you're welcome to my house anytime you want to come to South Florida. Swimming pools, pickleball, jacuzzis, saunas, everything's on property. Billiards, you name it, we have it. And love to have you. Even morning aerobics if you need, water aerobics if you need.
Well, thank you, my friend. I've been meaning to do that for years, honestly. I've been watching the event calendar thinking, is there a weekend in there? Maybe I could go hang out with Joel and Jana and just check out the homestead. And I never quite put it together, but there's still time.
There is plenty of time. You're not going somewhere else. You're just leaving the day to day. So I know I'll still see you sometimes. So you know that the door is always open. The only thing you have to do is you have to schedule it with my wife, because there's always someone staying in my house, and there's not always room for there's no other rooms. The 2 bedrooms are occupied at the moment for this week and next week. So you'll have to put your reservations in with my wife.
A pretty remarkable feat, given that your house actually isn't listed on Airbnb. It's
No,
amazing
it's
how
not.
you get those rooms booked.
It's not. It's my wife entertains everyone in my house all the time. We have family and friends that stay with us all the time.
Well, that's great. So one of the reasons I want to have you on is, like, we've all known Rich a long time. You guys longer than me. I know I've known Rich now for over a decade, and that's actually not as long as you and Colleen, because you guys go back back to the beginning. So one of the reasons why I wanted to get you guys on to talk about it is just to share a couple cool stories, a good memory that we've had with Rich, either traveling on the road. And Joel, you've been on the road a lot with Rich over the years, probably well more than Colleen and I. So I just want to open up the floor. Like, who's got a good Rich Freeman story to tell?
Colleen, why don't you go first?
Okay, well, so jokes on Rich here, but I still go back to some post-event dinner that we were all at, and Rich, still had his nice sport coat on, and the waiter came over, the big long table serving the wine, and the 2 tables were pushed together, and Rich was sitting on the crease, if you will. And the waiter put down the glass of wine on the crease, and it promptly landed in Rich's lap. So chaos ensued. Everybody jumped up. The waiter, apologized, cleaned up the table. came back with fresh glasses, put another one down for Rich, poured the red wine, and it promptly did the same thing, still on the crease. So Rich had to go to our event the next day with a wine-soaked jacket.
And you know what? That's not even the only time I've had to do one of our events with a jacket that has an odor. I don't know if you remember this, but we were, I'm nearly certain you were there. We were in Boston doing an event. And I think it was you and me and Michael Siggins and a fourth person, a guest, having dinner. And the waitress brought my soup, this sort of fish soup, and dumped some of it on me. And I smelled like fish for the rest of the week. It's sort of a pattern for me. What's the thing, Joel? There, you know, in Yiddish, there's schlemiel and schlemazel, and one of them is the person who spills the soup. I'm the schlemazel, the guy who gets spilled on.
The schlemazel is the guy who gets the soup spilled on him. You're the schlemazel these days.
Well, you are the common denominator of the spilling incidents, Rich. So now I don't know what that says about you or the wait staff, but
yeah. Yeah, maybe I'm attracting hostility from the wait staff. I don't know.
They say you don't eat enough, Rich. And speaking about eat enough, let's talk about Rich's eating habits. Rich, I got to tell you, I eat like whatever you eat for meals, I've eaten for appetizers. The man has a salad and he's full. That's all. With a little chicken on it. Every night you can be sure to find Rich at the bar having a salad or a hamburger. Every night. Everywhere we go. Rich, you want to come for dinner? No, I'm busy writing. Because Rich is always writing. All right, I'm going out with some customers. I'll see you later. And where do I find him? At the bar, having a hamburger or a Caesar salad with grilled chicken on it. Almost every time. But very, very, very easy to know what you're going to have for dinner.
Yeah, very, very predictable dining habits at hotels. Yeah, a lot of salads and way more salads than hamburgers. But yeah, those two do seem to pop up a lot.
You know, we take a lot of pictures together, and for some reason, you seem so much smaller than I am. I don't understand why.
I think the salads help with that Rich Freeman physique that he's got going on.
There you go. And he's got a very predictable workout routine we learned over the years too. You know, get to the gym early and try to get the one bike in the hotel gym and hoping that it's not broken. Is that right, Rich?
Oh, that is absolutely right. Absolutely. I'm in the gym very early every morning on the road, and I am a one machine guy. It's got to be the bike. And so if there's only one, it's being used or it's broken. There was that time we were doing an event at a hotel in Dallas, and there was the one bike. It wasn't used, but somebody had messed with the pedals so that they were like aligned with each other. You push them both down, and then you were done because they weren't cycling around. If I can't use the bike, you know, sometimes I'll get on the treadmill or the elliptical, but it's not the same thing. I really, really want the exercise bike.
But why is that? Why is it the bike? I've never understood that. Like, because walking on a treadmill's pretty good, but what's with the bike?
So walking on a treadmill is pretty good. It's just never as vigorous a workout for me as the bike is. I pedal pretty hard on the bike. And then for whatever reason, I've just never been able to get comfortable on an elliptical. My posture's wrong. It never feels natural to me. So I'll do it sometimes, but I don't enjoy it. I want the bike. I've got a bike at home.
You know, Rich is known for his outfit. He wears the same outfit every day. So he goes to the gym in that same outfit as well. I don't know if you know that. It's that black knit shirt and the black sport coat every time. It's always the same. I'm telling you, you'll find him everywhere around the country in a gym in that same outfit, or on a show floor talking to somebody.
I sleep in this too.
I bet you do.
Is that custom knit sport coat pajamas?
Yes.
With a fleece liner. So with all that time on the bike, you must be like, your legs are like, you know, He-Man style legs, you know, super muscular, but then on top it's kind of small. Because do you ever work out the arms to match the legs?
Well, maybe not to match the legs, but I do some, at least when I'm home. I never do this on the road for whatever reason, but at home I do some free weight stuff.
The cooties.
Oh, that's good.
What was that?
It's the cooties in the gym.
Yeah, exactly.
So, Colleen, Jay-Z, throw another story out there. A good rich memory moment.
All right, so one time the Seahawks, Rich's favorite football team, being from Seattle, were playing the Patriots. We won't talk about the tragic Super Bowl loss for the Seahawks against the Patriots. I wouldn't do that to you, Rich. But it's just a regular game we had a bet on, and I wanted smoked salmon from Seattle if the Patriots won, and Rich wanted clam chowder from Boston if the Seahawks won. And the Seahawks did win. And I had, there was a little bit of a delay, but I had the chowder delivered. And he didn't say anything. So I finally asked him, like, say, did that chowder ever arrive? And he says, yeah, something came, but I thought it was from a vendor. So I haven't really looked at it yet. Like, nope, that's your bet, chowder.
And that was really good, by the way. And the fact that it didn't like arrive 2 days after the game was perfect. It was just, as you say, it was a surprise. And boy, was that good. I still remember that.
Yeah, well, someday I'm going to get that smoked salmon, Rich. We have to make another bet about something.
Yeah.
A lot of gambling going on in Channel Pro, apparently.
Yeah. Did I mention, Matt, that Rich likes to write quite a bit. In the 15 years that we've been together, that I've been with Channel Pro and traveling with Rich most of it, I think that he's been to 3 meals in 15 years with me because he's always busy writing. And I'm out every day with every meal with the customers and with our friends and with all our MSP readers that go out with us. But Rich never goes out. You'll find him at the bar having his salad or his hamburger.
Well,
we've had plenty of breakfasts and lunches together. It's just dinner when I'm always in my room. Yeah.
Breakfast, lunches once in a while, but breakfast definitely. Lunches, sometimes you got to run and get on a call. Yeah, it leaves me abandoned in the corner all by myself.
So, JC, tell me a story from the early days, because Rich was around at the beginning of Channel Pro. You came on shortly after that, after the magazine was founded. Give me a story, a first impression story when you first met Rich, or something like that, something from back in the day.
I thought, from talking to Rich on the phone and not meeting him yet in person, I thought I was going to meet a 300-pound, 6'2", editor at the time. And then he walks in, and I go, "Who's Rich?" And they go, "Oh, he's Rich." And I go, "You're not as tall as I am." And I said, "You are a powerful man in a smaller body than me, and I am not anywhere near as powerful you are with the pen." And I agree to that to this day. You're a very, very powerful man with a pen. So thank you for everything you've done and everything you do for Channel Pro and everything you've done for Channel Pro. Because since the beginning, you were there and you have been there for every one of our vendors and all of our MSPs that have been out there asking to get coverage.
It's funny. The entire Channel Pro editorial staff is all less than like 5'4".
Yeah, I know. You're right. You're right.
It's true.
That's why when I take a picture with all of you guys, I'm like, "Who is that tower? Who is that gorilla in the picture?" I'm a very large guy compared to the size of all 3 of you. So,
it's a really funny thing, Joe, because we have spent a ton of time together out on the road, and we're great road companions. But I always think of us as like salt and pepper. Somehow, very different, and yet somehow it kind of works because physically, personality, it's like that we have nothing in common. Except we work for Channel Pro, but it sort of works. It syncs.
It does. And I'm glad to know that you're not leaving us for good, that you're just going away for a little while and helping out and going to be consulting for us and doing some part-time stuff. So that's a good thing. Glad to hear it. I'm glad to know these things, and I'm glad that Colleen's able to pick up some of the stuff, and Matt is going to be able to handle a lot of the other stuff. But things are going to change, and we're going to get better and better and grow. I'm just excited for the next chapter in both your lives and Channel Pro's life in editorial. So, cheers to you, my friend.
Thank you, and me too on both of those. Yeah.
So we'll turn the tables a little bit because you guys have told some stories, and I'll tell a story, and then I want to give Rich an opportunity to tell somewhat of his fond memories about us, which should be very, very interesting. But there's one story that I want to tell, and I love telling it because it's just really funny the way this worked out. But I've had the pleasure of kind of becoming friends with Rich over the years, and he's come out to our house here in Illinois, and we spent time together, and he spent time with my family and my kids. My kids absolutely love him. So I've been able to build some memories that way, and we've done some pretty cool things. But the one story that I love telling, I think we've told it on the podcast before. So sorry, folks, if you heard this one, but I love telling the story of the iguana. Right. This Rich is already laughing. He's throwing his head back. So the story of the iguana goes that at one point on an episode, Rich, and this was a long time ago, back when we were in the audio days with Cecilia Galvin, we were talking about pets, and Rich made a comment that like that he has like a pet iguana, and it's easy for him to have a pet iguana because when he travels, because they don't take a lot of work. Rich, am I setting that up right? Is that correct?
So this was on the podcast a long time ago when we were co-hosting with our wonderful friend Cecilia Galvin, and towards the end of the show we got into this conversation about our pets. And I'm on the road, whatever, 30 plus weeks a year. I mean, I have plants, I mean, it wouldn't be fair really to have a cat or a dog or something. So when it was my turn, you were talking about Mr. Kitty, and Celia was talking about her dogs, and when it got to be my turn, I came up with what I thought was really obviously a joke and said, well, I have a pet iguana.
And the funny thing was, is at the time we asked questions about it, and we were like, oh, what do you feed it? And he gave answers that sounded good, and he just rolled with it. But the funny thing is I totally bought it, like big time bought it. So Rich comes out to Illinois at one point, and we're at dinner with my wife and my two kids. We were at Arturo's, if I remember correctly, and I'm like, oh, I was talking to my kids, you should ask Rich about his pet iguana. And then Rich's face kind of like changes, and he looks at me and he's like, I really don't have a pet iguana. Right. And I'm like, and I totally thought he did. It was like no joke about it. So I was kind of shocked. So what we did though is before you left, so it's that night, as soon as we got home, I got on Amazon and I ordered like this stuffed iguana that is like, like a plush thing. And we gave it to him at breakfast just before he was getting ready to leave. So now Rich has a pet stuffed iguana, which hopefully he can put it in frame.
Yeah. For the benefit of people who are watching on video, there he is up there.
There he is. So now it's true that he does have a pet iguana. That was always a really funny moment, funny story that I liked. So, but there's
out there in the palm trees.
Yeah. Joel could bring you a real one from where he's at. So that's a good one. There's lots of kind of fun stories because I've gotten a chance to take Rich to places like we went up to the House on the Rock. Rich might have a story about that. Or I've taken him to Ice Hogs games. Like we've just had a lot of fun over the years, and something that I hope continues on as the years go by. This is saying goodbye to maybe a full-time colleague, but not to a friend. Which is nice to say. So Rich, but I want to give a chance to turn the tables and have you tell kind of a fond memory of Colleen, Jay-Z on the road, or myself. Be nice,
Well, let's see. So, and I always kind of freeze up, like the great stories will come to me after we're done here. So that we talked about the evening that Colleen and her husband Ralph and I went out to for cannoli, but that evening began. I remember they took me to this sort of beer garden in Boston. I mean, this isn't like a hilarious story, but it's a very fond memory for me because it was this great place where there are all these different sort of microbrews available, and we hung out for probably half an hour or an hour there. The thing I remember is just that we were all approximately 40 years younger or older rather than anyone else there, which was just interesting. We were hanging out with the 20-something crowd and swilling beer and having a good time, and then we walked into the North End for Italian dinner. I'm trying to think of if I've got to have some. Oh, I know. Here's a good story. I can tell the story, Colleen, about the time we first met face to face, which you'll remember. So Colleen has been with ChannelPro from the very, very beginning. And I worked with her on other stuff from before ChannelPro times, like when I was at Microsoft and so on. So I've known Colleen a long while, but we had never actually been physically together in a room. And these days you're on Zoom, you're seeing each other all the time. We just never seen each other in years and years until this was, I think, 2016. we were both going to be, or maybe 2017, we were both going to be at a ChannelPro event in Long Beach. And I'm sitting at the hotel coffee bar area, typing away, writing an article, and I see a woman making a beeline for me with this giant grin on her face, and she clearly recognizes me and wants to say hello. And I'm like, oh my God, who is this? And it turned out to be Colleen, and she, it took her aback a little bit that she had to explain who she was as she was making her way over there. I had just never seen you before.
Yes, you did look surprised, Rich. I first I thought you were worried I was going to steal your laptop. I don't know. I was ready for a hug, and you were like, "Are you?"
A total stranger is coming in for a hug, and yeah, that was pretty funny. I'm trying to think. There's got to be so many amazing Jay-Z stories. But the thing that just keeps popping into my head, there are so many wonderful, quirky things about traveling with Joel that I will miss. And the one that just keeps popping into my head is the ritual we go through, Joel, where we both, typically we're on different flights or whatever, but sometimes we show up same airport, same time, and we go to get a rental car. And I then get to watch the Joel Zaidspiner rental car show, because you're very particular about what you want.
I've been there. I know exactly what you're talking about.
And I know it's coming. I just settle in. It's going to be 15 minutes while we see what's available. And it's like, but Cadillac, where's my Lincoln? There's got to be a Lincoln here somewhere. And they go looking around because he's like, double diamond with National, I guess it is, or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they usually give me what I want.
They do.
They
do.
bend
You
over
always...
backwards for whatever he wants at a rental car place.
Yeah.
I work hard and I play hard. So I'm going to work. I want to have the right vehicle that's going to make us feel good when we're driving.
And it is always a comfortable ride. That's for sure.
I got to make sure I take care of my team. My team's got to be in it too. So it's got to be the right vehicle. I can't put you in a Corolla. We all wouldn't fit.
No offense to our listeners or viewers out there who have a Corolla. Okay.
No offense. It's just we all wouldn't fit in the Corolla. There's too many of us. We just need a bigger vehicle, and I usually get the bigger vehicle, so it's great.
So because of Joel, Rich now knows how to best negotiate with car rental places, and because of Colleen, Rich now holds his wallet every time a small female rushes towards him anywhere.
That's right.
That's good. That's good.
Rich, I miss you here in the event that I'm at here in beautiful Cancun, Mexico. I'm sorry that you're not here with me, because last year we were, and we got to celebrate your birthday together here at the event. So happy birthday to you as well.
Well, thank you. Yeah, thank you very much. And in fact, Joel was so sweet. We were at breakfast the morning of my birthday, and he sort of whispered to the waiter, and they brought over a piece of cake and sang a song and made a little fuss in the restaurant, which was really nice.
No, we missed that this year. We had a crowd that was ready to go this year.
Very good. Rich, any other stories you want to tell?
All I can tell you is, like I said before, I will think of the priceless ones after we're done here. But I've got many additional stories, and I'm sure just amazing road stories involving Joel.
Well, I'm sure that we'll see each other soon enough, and I know I'll see you next week. I'm very excited about that. So
yep, me too,
my friend.
Well, that's good. Colleen, it's probably a good place to wrap. Any last words that you'd like to say?
Well, my last word is, Rich, don't let this be our last words together. I know you're going to be around, and I'm looking forward to working together in a different capacity. So it feels like I've known you for a good part of my working life, and one job or another. So it's been a pleasure. I've learned a lot from you. I appreciate your work ethic, and I will miss you on the day-to-day for sure.
Well, ditto. Yeah, absolutely. That goes for all three of you, actually. But I like Joel said, and I keep coming back to this myself. This there will be less of me around, but I'm not going away altogether. And I know I'm gonna hang out with Matt and his kids, and see Colleen, and get that cannoli, and see Joel on the road going forward.
That'll be good. Well,
Okay.
good stuff. Big thanks for Joel Zaidspiner, associate president, publisher, mayor. I don't know. He goes by a lot of titles. Thanks for popping on the show. And of course, a big thanks for managing editor Colleen Frye for stopping by and sharing her thoughts. Always a pleasure to see you and have you on the program. So we'll take a short break. When we come back, this will either be part 2 coming up or part 3. I know we're going to try to get another interview in with Michael Siggins, who's the publisher and boss man here at ChannelPro. We're going to try to get him on to record. So hopefully we can get that in. Otherwise, we'll go into part 3 where we'll break down the show and we'll play a final 5 questions with Rich Freeman and maybe some other chit chat and banter. So stay tuned with us here on this farewell episode, and we will be right back. And welcome back to part 3. I guess this is going to be a 4-part episode, I suppose. But welcome back. We've got another great guest to join us. This is kind of our farewell episode for Mr. Freeman, and who in this company has known Rich Freeman longer than anybody is our publisher, as I lovingly refer to as boss man here at the ChannelPro Network. Please welcome Michael Siggins.
Well, thank you very much for having me on this solemn but bittersweet occasion. I dressed up for it, trying to be festive for this.
We were just talking earlier about his trip to Cancun, so I think you're right in spirit with that particular story.
Oh, really? Because there's a story about this. Because a lot of people don't know it, but our accounting team sometimes, they're doing their thing, and Rich was trying to get clearance. I don't even know if Rich remembers this or not, but booking the flight for Cancun, and of course they questioned it. It was at the same time where I was buying some loungewear, and so actually I put this on Rich's expense report. He probably doesn't even know that, but it still fits. So I'm proud to say that. So.
Now, is that one of the Hawaiian shirts that we got for the Survivor session last year?
Matt, are you trying to say this is like some kind of old shirt I didn't just wear for this activity? It may be for those who graced our events in 22. They may recognize this, but I have a whole closet full of these. So
that's a good look. It's a good look for you. It's very very relaxed, very very nice. So I'm glad to have you on, because I wanted to give you an opportunity to tell us a little bit about maybe the past of how you met Rich and how you roped Rich into this, and kind of your thoughts on him going. So why don't we start by talking about how you met Rich and how you got him involved in this crazy experiment that you call ChannelPro.
Well, this is back before you had to swipe left or right, back in the old days of old networking. And so, Rich, does this look familiar to you?
Yes, it does.
I don't know if I'm getting the image of it here, but so this is a copy of a magazine out of my archives. Ties into when Rich and I first met. So this has got to be 24 years ago, actually. Was it 99 maybe?
It could have been that far back. Yeah. So it's got to be at least 22, 23 years.
Yeah. So I was working for a company called IDG, which has gone through some changes since then. But it was at that point, one of the largest technology media companies in the world. And I worked in the custom publishing team. And what we were basically like a small boutique marketing agency for technology vendors. And one of my customers at that time was a little company called Microsoft. I think they were just sort of starting out back then, but they've done pretty well for themselves. I don't know, Rich's stocks may have tripled or quadrupled since then. But so Rich was on one of the teams that became an account of mine back then. And what I was doing at that time, we were, creating custom content. The web as we know it was relatively new. If this was 99, if I'm not mistaken. So it's only been around for a couple of years, but print was still a big thing. And we doing audio and video and some online kind of custom content production. And I got my foot in the door there, and there was a group that was doing content for executives, teaching them about the business value of IT. And that was part of Rich's team at that point. And so we collaborated on what became like a quarterly print publication for a couple of years, and it was called Executive Circle. And so this reminds me of Rich, because when we first met, this is what we were working on. And as I was looking back through my my keepsake box, I also found these. And these are actually the socks that I was wearing when I first met Rich. So it's just a big day of nostalgia for us over here in my place. And I promised myself I wouldn't get too caught up in it. And whew, is it humid in here? So I don't want to pull out anything else I might have been wearing that day, but it was great. So Rich and I met back then, and he was my customer then, and I was his agile consultant and provider at that time. And so it was really neat getting to work with Rich in that capacity. Not that long after that, Rich left Microsoft and kind of hung out his own shingle and was doing a bunch of sort of freelance work. And so our paths crossed again, and then Rich started doing some custom projects with me and some other people that we knew. Actually, you know who else is on this masthead? Colleen Frye is in here. So I know you guys are speaking with her today too. So Colleen Frye has also been up on the Rich bandwagon for almost a quarter century now. So Rich and I interacted kind of a few times doing some other projects, and then I had a chance to start up what is now known as ChannelPro in all its various incarnations. And I literally was, it was an idea on a kind of on a napkin, and I'm like, you know what, I need a really smart, funny, great guy, great team player, you know, who knows all about technology, who knows how to put together like award-winning content, knows how to really pull a great team together, who's like funny, you know, just someone you could absolutely count on. And you know, he wasn't available, so Rich was, and
I saw it coming, by the way.
Rich was patiently waiting for it. The long lead up. No, but actually that was Rich, and he was available because at that time, you know, Real Housewives of the Seattle area hadn't kind of been formulated yet, so Rich had some free time on his agenda. And no, so Rich was the first guy I went to, and I said, we're going to start up like a media property for this like underserved audience, and they weren't even MSPs yet. They didn't even know they were MSPs yet. They were VARs, they were channel pros, they were providers. They had a number of cool names, but not yet to be MSPs. But I said, Rich, you know, we want to do this thing, and we want to, you know, we've been knowing each other for a number of years. We want to create like a media company that can really be the advocate of this audience. And Rich was like, sign me up. And so he was like, I call him like employee 1A. I was employee 1, he was 1A. And then lots of stuff happened since then, but you know, the rest was history, and it was a great history. So Rich and I mean, you know, there's been no shortage of times that I had the opportunity to work with Rich, and I took everyone that I could get. And so I'm glad that Rich is, you know, he's shifting gears, he's turning a new chapter, doing all those you know, metaphors, but it seems like he's gonna stick with us. He's got a kind of a new title he'll be sporting on a business card as our founding editor, and continuing to contribute, along with contributing to other ventures that he's probably already speaking about today. So I'm really proud to have known you, Rich, and work with you. And I've got the memories. I've got the memories to prove it. So.
And you've never washed those socks, right?
No, I haven't, because it would there's too much of a risk there.
So Rich, let's get your perspective on the history there. So he came to you with you know, you guys have done other projects before. What was your impression of Michael? Did you think he was nuts when he proposed ChannelPro to you?
No. Well, so from my perspective, I as a business proposition, I didn't really know one way or the other if that was going to work. But I right from the get-go, I just loved the idea of, oh, we're going to invent a magazine, you know, and he's inviting me to help with that. And I still, you know, it's a long time ago now, but I still look back at that, whatever it was, you know, 3-4 month period as some of the best sort of work months of my career, because there was so much creativity happening in such a short time. And it's amazing. I sometimes think back, you know, Michael, to how much of what we created in those few months is still in effect today. It's like we you know, and very, very quickly we sort of came up with a template for what should be in the magazine, and some of those pieces have dropped away, and newer things have come on and so on. But a lot of this, you know, what we would maybe think of as signature elements, the peer-to-peer column, and the picture of the pier on the cover and the quick hit section up front and all that stuff we just came up with on the fly in a very short time. And yeah, it was just an amazing experience to be able to do that.
Yeah, and the mission hasn't changed. Let me say right now that whoever's listening right now, we love you. We love our audience. It's like you know, maybe it's kind of an overused term, but it's a family. It's a neat group of people, like quirky people from all over the place, all different kind of walks of life. But many of the ones that we, I mean, what I should have done too, and is to pull like maybe like the first year some of the covers. But if you look at, and as Rich mentioned, you know, our motto, not our motto, but our kind of guideline was, you know, the magazine is for and about, and in many cases by channel pros, right? You know, writing the articles, providing the insights, contributing their best practices, etc. And whether it's in print or online or on our event stages the last 11 years. But many of the people that we met early on are like still in the biz, and they may have evolved just like we've evolved a bit. We've all aged a bit. But some of the success stories I love is when someone that, you know, we're writing about or covering, regardless of where they were in their history as sort of as a channel pro, is that they sometimes then sort of shifted gears and became not so much a peer, but almost like a provider of services to other channel pros. And there's a number of stories. And I know, you know, Rich would recall, you know, and Matt, you recall many of them. It was neat that, you know, many of these people that we would cover or write about or be at our shows would often have a problem. They needed a tool to solve. They needed some kind of solution, and they wound up creating the solution, the tool for themselves, and then becoming someone who could share that with their peers and our audience. And so those are some kind of cool success stories that I like to see from the folks that we cover and that are in our kind of extended family here. But you know, I think back to from the very beginning. You know, many of the customers that we work with in year one or whatever are still with us. They may have changed names in some cases a few times. You know, some have gone off to the great beyond, but even so many of those vendors really were committed to this too, because we wanted to be like a voice, an advocate for the channel pro, the IT provider, you know, serving small and medium businesses. They didn't have like a champion. And so that's what we did in our humble efforts over the years. You know, we just wanted to provide them with the insights, the best practices, a place to hang their hats at our events or online with us and in our magazine or on our covers. It's still, I got to say, one of the most sought after places to be seen, not at the latest, trendiest bar or anything like that, but on the cover of Channel Pro magazine. So, so Rich, maybe if you become a Channel Pro, it'll be your chance to get on the cover, because you've never been on the cover either.
It's true. I've got an in on that. Basically, our good friend Joshua Liberman, an MSP solution provider in Albuquerque, once said that excuse me, Channel Pro is the Rolling Stone of the channel. Basically, it's like everybody wants to see their smiling face on the cover of the, you know, Channel Pro. Basically. And I mean, it's true. I've met people who have told me it's sort of like a bucket list item. I am going to make it onto the cover of that magazine someday.
Well, you know the criteria, Rich. You can't buy your way on
it. That is absolutely true. That is absolutely true. First of all, you got to be a channel pro. You got to be an MSP or a VAR or what. We don't have vendors or even like analysts and consultants and experts. It's always somebody in the channel who we are celebrating on the cover of the magazine.
Mm-hmm.
So Michael, you've known Rich a long time. I want to give you an opportunity to tell a Rich Freeman story, something we've been on the road with him. He's been to our events. You've known him forever. Give us a good Rich Freeman story, a memory that sticks out in your head.
A good Rich. Well, some of the ones that come to mind, I probably shouldn't talk about because I need to protect the guilty. But I would say, for me, it's not so much one particular story, but it's sort of a certain time of any time that we've been together. As a lot of people know, Rich is like, he's the hardest working guy in IT media. He's like the James Brown in IT media. And he puts so much of himself and his time into everything he does. And when we travel with him, or when Rich is on the road, he is all business. And which is what we like to see that. but to have Rich be able to find time to kind of unwind on these trips, because there's a lot, there's a lot that is expected of him. And he mentioned before, I know he was saying about how many trips he does. So downtime is at a premium. So I'll just say that for me, sort of the best time to be with Rich is when he's really relaxing and having some downtime. And it could be in a bar, like one of our team dinners after, like say the ChannelPro team is putting on one of our events and everybody's dog tired and we're going out like to a team dinner. The day is done, the boxes are packed, the labels are affixed, and we're just chilling and having cocktails, maybe too many cocktails, and just relaxing, eating too much food, and just to see everybody kind of smile and relax. And those are like precious times for Rich. And because all during the day, Rich has got kind of his proverbial, press reporter hat on. He's going nonstop. If you could picture some of the older people, or even from the old movies with the journalists, with the cigarette, burning in the midnight oil, going and typing through all hours of the night. That's Rich. I mean, he's a dedicated artisan to what he does. But so for me, the best time is when Rich can unplug, relax, talk about the things that he loves, traveling, food, alcohol, and I mean, all those things in a good way. I mean, he's like a foodie, he's a traveler, he's a guy that just loves the stories. And then he's got a bunch of great stories too, talking about, if you get the pleasure to be with him and you'll hear some of those stories yourself. I'm not going to give away some of the Freeman secrets, but when Rich relaxes and he's having a good time and he's looking back on a day that's been a big success, he's just a treat to be around.
For sure. Rich, any Michael Siggins story that you'd like to share?
There are some stories that go back way back to when we first met, and I was working at Microsoft about that magazine he was talking about that I probably shouldn't say, because you never know, people involved in these stories might be listening or watching. I just want to kind of follow up on what Michael was saying there, because it really the whole team at ChannelPro, and I know I've said this before, everybody works really, really hard, and not just at the events, but especially at the events. There's a lot to do, and we enjoy each other's company while we're working, as I think is true at a lot of organizations. But it's at those moments after an event when we are all physically together at the same place, because people don't know, there is no like ChannelPro HQ where all of us kind of sit together and work together and chat at the water cooler. I mean, since the beginning, since way before COVID, we were as virtual organization as it can be. I mean, there's never been more than like 3 or 4 of us in one place at one time. So these events are like the few times during the year when we're actually like physically together. And those post-event dinners and hangout sessions, that's when you really kind of discover, are we office friends or are we actually friends? Do we genuinely like one another and enjoy hanging out together? And the answer is clearly, it's not just a work thing. As we've talked about, I hang out with Matt and his family whenever I can get out to Illinois, and I've spent leisure time with Colleen as well, Joel and I on weekends and stuff like that. So this is something I'm just incredibly grateful for. I've tried never to take for granted, because it just doesn't happen to most people. And it's good to know I'm not like dropping off the face of the earth, and neither is anyone else. We're all going to be seeing each other. It just won't be quite as often, and that is definitely something that I'll miss.
For sure. So, Michael, I'll give you one last question to see what you think. So, Rich is not, as he said, not leaving entirely. He's still going to be around in some capacity, but he had to be, fairly bummed to hear the news. What was your thoughts, and any other final thoughts on Rich's tenure here as a full-time staffer? What emotions you want to share? Tell us what's on your mind.
Yeah, most of the emotions shared in private, but just a great gratitude. And like I mentioned, starting up ChannelPro, there was only one person I wanted to do that with, and that was with Rich, and because I knew it would be great. And it's hard to believe. It's, well, like as we mentioned, it's hard to believe ChannelPro has been actually in its 17th year, because we were in the skunk works behind the scenes for a few months before we actually launched, of course, and then having known Rich for like 6 years prior to that. So it's been many years, and we've seen kind of many adventures. So maybe someday they'll be making a movie about our experiences. I don't know who would play us. Maybe Dennis Quaid for you, Rich. Maybe Bill Murray for me. I don't know. We'll figure out the casting later. But Matt, obviously, Justin Bieber, for you. But
I thought you were gonna say like Carrot Top.
If he's out of rehab, I think that could be a good choice. No, so just like Rich was my first. He's the first choice for this was ChannelPro. I frankly, in my kind of years of the stuff I was doing before ChannelPro, doing a lot of programs and creating a lot of projects, from scratch. My focus was on custom content, but ChannelPro was the first thing to really start from scratch as a business and to play a really specific role and cater to an audience and build a business around. And it was, Rich was the person that I wanted to help get that off the ground. And so his sort of fingers and his DNA is like on everything, that we've done. And so it'll be that way forever. Like his legacy can be seen everywhere. He's planted so many seeds and they've grown and matured and, over the years. And so as he moves on into his new ventures, he'll continue to check in on the stuff that he's done and contribute to it. And I know he mentioned about, the long-term friendships and all that. I'm sure none of that will change. So I wish him the best, but I wish him like not farewell, but more like an au revoir. We will be seeing each other again. In fact, I'll see you in a couple of days.
Rich Freeman, the Johnny Appleseed of the channel. That is what you'll be forever known for. Well, awesome stuff. Michael, thanks so much for coming on and coming on the show to talk to us and sharing some stories and sharing some thoughts. Rich, any other last response that you wanted to give or thoughts before we say goodbye to Michael?
Well, again, at the risk of getting to him, I'll just say there are actually very few people. I'm privileged to have like friendships and relationships with people I went to college with, and I'm old enough that's been a long time. But there's certainly nobody in my professional life, and not even a ton of people in my social life, I have known longer than Michael. It's just, one of the great relationships, friendships, collaborations that I've ever had and know that I ever will have. We work together in different ways and different capacities. It's always gone really, really well. It's always just been fun to do and rewarding, and it's like I was paying him once upon a time, and I've been working for him now for a long time, and it's never been awkward in any way. So I want to kind of express gratitude for that and just having that opportunity, and it'll be a little bit weird. I mean, this is really the first time in a long time where we will be working together, but just not nearly as much, as intensely as we have for a couple of decades now. But I just couldn't be more grateful for those decades, and just looking forward to all the good stuff to come.
Well said. And the pleasure's all mine. Thank you.
Well said. Well, thanks again for coming on. I appreciate it. We are going to take a short break. When we come back, Rich and I will be wrapping up this farewell episode here, where we'll be playing a final game of 5 questions with Rich Freeman. We'll see where that goes, and staying true to form, I'm not writing them in advance. I'm trying to think of them on the fly, but I got to come up with all 5, so it's going to be tricky. We'll talk about a little bit about what's going to happen, the future of the show, and we'll go through all that stuff. So if you want to find out all that stuff, you got to stick around. We will be right back. And we are back now with part 4, I suppose it would be, of this farewell episode of Channel Pro Weekly with Mr. Rich Freeman. Rich, it's kind of funny. I was just before we started recording, I was going to make a crack that like we anticipated this episode to go an hour, and of course, naturally, it went like 2, which is very true to form for this particular episode. We are not known for being short-winded, if I should say. And that's always been the case. We've always like, oh yeah, let's try to get the show done in an hour and 15 minutes. We always go to 2.
And it's like week after week we'll start recording the show, and I'll either be thinking, or we'll say to each other, well, this will be a quick one because there's not a lot on the show notes, and this will be 70 minutes and we're out, and then 2.5 hours later we're wrapping up.
It's like, oh boy, well, this is what it's going to be. That's just the way it's always been, and I'm kind of glad that our farewell episode here with you has remained true to form, and we've gone basically 2 hours again. So that's nice and fun. So what I wanted to do here on the other side is that was a great conversation with Joel and Colleen. A great conversation with Michael Siggins. Really appreciate him coming on to talk to us. I noticed that you haven't told any stories about me. So I want to give you an opportunity to share a Matt memory, a fond Matt memory, if you would like to. But if you don't want to, that's okay.
Oh gosh, well, and there are so many. What comes to mind, I wish, and maybe I'll find it and we can work it into the video version of the episode. But I remember you taking me to this was I think on my first visit out to hang out with you and the family. We went to a hockey game. And you tracked down. So this team is an AHL team. It's based in Rockford, Illinois. They are the Ice Hogs, and what is the name of the mascot? Hammy.
Yep.
Yeah, Hammy the Ice Hog, and we were at the arena before the game began, and I forget how you pulled this off, Matt. You sort of waved down Hammy to come over. And take a picture with me, and here's a show memory that comes back to me we haven't talked about before, which was there was a period of time in the history of the show where my nickname was Captain Serious, because we have a lot of fun on the show, but the guy who's like talking business is Rich. Like Rich is Captain Serious on the show, and so if you can imagine Captain Serious getting captured on film next to this giant Ice Hog mascot waving at the camera, it's quite a sight. That is a great memory. And this is a random thing, but I've always wondered about. I still remember the night that we met first in person. We had spoken on calls and stuff like that, but the first time that we met in person, and this has to be 2013, 2014, something like that. But ChannelPro was doing an event in Long Beach that we both went to. And I just remember Celia, who, had very strong relationship at the time with both of us. We barely knew each other, kind of rounded us both up, and the three of us were talking. And I just remember at one point you kind of looked at me, and more to yourself than to anyone else, you just said, I like this guy. And I just remember thinking to myself, what did I just do or say to deserve? That's nice. I like that. But I wonder what it was. But we clicked right away.
We did.
We really did.
I don't know if I can recall what you did or what you said. You have a pretty good sense of humor when you get the Captain Serious motif going on, and especially back in the day, going back 10 years, I was a goofball. I've always kind of been that way, and you had kind of a good sense of humor. I don't remember exactly what it was, but I remember I did really take to you right away, and I thought we had a really good rapport going, and I liked your personality, and we did click, and we've been pretty good friends ever since, and it's folks, like, we're kind of waxing nostalgic here a little bit, but it's a friendship that I know that is going to surpass just work relationships. Like Rich and I will probably be friends until the end of time, because it's we after as much time as we've spent together, and if you think about times we spent doing events, but just the amount of hours we spent on this show together talking, I mean, it adds up. to a lot. But yeah, we did take to each other really quick, and kind of always have been that way. And that's something that I'll always enjoy and remember. And you've had I could tell lots of stories because we've dragged Rich around with my family, all kinds of crazy adventures, and with more to come, and I know that we're due to come and visit you in Seattle, and that will happen at some point eventually when the kids have a less crazy schedule, but we will make that happen. So good memories. We've been playing 5 questions on this show for a long time. It's been our signature game. I've played 5 questions with you in the past, but I thought, what better way to kind of close it out with you than to play a game of 5 questions to do that. So why don't we do that? 5 questions with Rich Freeman. I will try to come up with them all on the fly here. I'll start with a ridiculous one. If you were forced to choose a pet between the following 2 things, which would you choose? A polar bear or the world's largest tarantula?
That's it's clearly obviously a no-win proposition, but that is easy. And I don't know if you asked that knowing that this would be easy for me. It's like, bring on the polar bear, because I'm going to get slashed to death. But I just have a thing about not spiders in general, but tarantulas, like big ones. Do not get me anywhere near those. So yeah, I'm going with the polar bear.
So maybe you'll get a friendly, cuddly one, and you'll have something big to kind of keep you warm over the long winter. Or at least if you throw them out into the ocean, you might be able to get some fresh fish for you. Polar bears they could probably fish in the ocean. I don't see why they wouldn't be able to. So that's a good one. Question number 2. Let's see. What is the first thing that you're gonna do your last day, the first day after your last day officially at ChannelPro? What are you gonna do?
The truth is, I don't. So as we're recording this right now, that we are the week before a ChannelPro SMB forum event that we're going to be doing in Washington, DC. And so doing that show is my last week, basically as a full-time part of the team. And then we do the show on a Wednesday and a Thursday. On Friday, I actually fly to your backyard, Matt. I fly to Chicago. And ordinarily, when I'm at one of our events, I'm interviewing vendors while I can't, because we have them there with us, and it's like, oh, okay, I'm gonna interview vendors, and then I wind up spending the days after the show writing up lots of articles based on those interviews. And this is going to be the first post-event Saturday when I really don't need to do that. And I just like, wow, I'm going to be in Chicago, a city I love, and I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm going to enjoy Chicago in a way that I usually can't when I get there, because I'm usually attending some conference.
And as a side of that, we do need to try to plan something to get together while we're here.
Yes.
I think you sent me an email about it. I was searching my emails, and I think I caught something that I completely missed. So we'll talk about that later. All right, question number 3. I know you like to travel, and I know you like to sit out on the beach. So I'm not going to ask you about tropical vacations. I'm going to propose 2 alternate vacations and see which one you would be more interested in. Would you be more interested in backpacking the Himalayas, or would you prefer let's see, we got mountain climbing, trekking the Sahara Desert on camelback?
That and
those are the only 2 options.
Either of these things on my own, or is there like a guide? Or
let's say for the Himalayas, you are alone, and you can hire a Sherpa, and in the desert you can hire some guide for the desert.
So to be clear, I am not the world's most outdoorsy guy. My idea of roughing it, I often say, is being more than 100 yards away from a martini. So I figure either of those trips is going to end with me dying, basically. I'm just lost, you know. So the real question is, you know, do I want to die in the desert heat or maybe the mountain cold? And I'll take the mountain cold.
Okay, so you're going up the Himalayas with a Sherpa, never to be seen again. So you'll make it to the top, hopefully, and then that'll be it. All right, question number 4. And, you know, it's funny, my kids actually just showed up at the door over here, so I might have them write question number 5 for us. So children, start thinking of a crazy question to ask Rich Freeman. We're doing the farewell episode, and I will relay your question to it. But wait, I'm going to do question number 4 first. You're going to come up with question number 5. Well, okay, hold on. She says she's got a good one, so go ahead. All right, what's your question number 4?
Is his chameleon still eating his food?
Oh, the iguana? We actually talked about the iguana earlier. So she asked, is the iguana still consuming his food? But we already talked about the iguana. Do you have another crazy question? Think about it, and we'll come back to you. Think about it. All right, question number 4. If you were going to choose, oh, you know what? I'll ask a question, because one thing we mentioned earlier is that you, Michael mentioned alcohol, but what he was kind of trying to get to is Rich is a big fan of craft beer, and he likes to do craft beer stuff and try different things. Is there a particular craft beer that you would want to recommend that you've had recently?
Oh boy, that's and again, I'm going to kind of freeze up here. You know what, actually, this place, what's it called now? I'm gonna blank on the name of it. Is it Holy Mountain? I think it's Holy Mountain Brewing, right here in Seattle. It is really, really good. And what's funny about it is we used to work, both of us, with a guy named Mark Smith, and ChannelPro still has some goings on with his son Andrew Smith. And Andrew is like a serious, you're saying like I'm into craft beer. I enjoy drinking craft beer. Like Andrew is a really serious beer guy, and I mean truly. And I was talking with his dad once upon a time, and his dad said, you know, Andrew tells me there's a brewery in Seattle called Holy Mountain Brewing that like, you know, he's got very high standards, and this kind of, you know, passed his test. And I was thinking, I'd never heard of that before, and I pulled my phone out and looked it up. And not only is it like, you know, 3/4 of a mile from where I'm sitting right now, but it's like right on the route that I take every week to go to the grocery store. And I've been driving past this place for years and never even noticed that it was there. And so if you're listening, thank you, Andrew Smith and your dad, for kind of calling my attention to that place, because it is actually really good. When I get you out here to Seattle, we'll go check that place out.
That sounds like it'd be a lot of fun. All right, I hear my kids over here cackling away, so they must have come up with something funny to ask. What is it?
I want to know, is his refrigerator running?
They would like to know, is your refrigerator running?
Why, yes, it is.
So you should probably go catch it. Oh, they ended on a pun. Oh, leave it to my kids to do something like that.
I love it.
So, all right, cackling children, away with you. Does that even count as question number 5? I don't know. Question number 5. It's not going to be about your refrigerator. Let's see. Is there something I want to ask? So I asked about what you're going to do the day after. You know what? You do like to travel, and I asked about 2 crazy things. What is the next travel destination that you want to go to? Because I know you were at Thailand recently. What's on your bucket list next?
Well, I feel like I have unfinished business. I've been to many, many places in Europe. I've never been to Greece, and I had a trip fully booked. I had the plane, you know, the flight reserved, and a hotel reserved, and I just had everything ready to go for a trip to Greece in June 2020. And as you might recall, that turned out not to be a great time to be traveling. So that trip just fell apart, and I still haven't been to Greece. And so if I can, especially now that I will have a little bit more flexibility of my schedule, I think going forward, that's probably my next destination.
That'll be fun. That'll be fun. Take some pictures. Maybe we'll do it. We used to do a segment on the show where we kind of follow Joel around the country. Maybe we'll follow Rich around the world where you vacation, and we can share some vacation pictures down the road. Well, thanks for playing 5 questions. Thanks for being co-host of the show for as long as you have. It's been this has been a 7-year ride for Channel Pro Weekly, as we kind of said, 258 episodes worth. If you multiply that times, a couple hours a show, that's a lot of hours of content that we've done together. And some of it hasn't even made it into the actual episode. So some of it has actually even been longer. So big thanks to you for that. Any final last thoughts you'd like to share? I know we know that you're going to be still kind of doing some stuff with Channel Pro here and there as a contributor, but I don't think you know what you're going to do otherwise, other than travel and vacation and drink craft beer. But is there any other things you want to say to our audience before you give up the role of co-host?
So I guess the first thing I'll just say is kind of stay tuned on my next plans. There are some things kind of coming together here, and not quite ready just yet. It's close, but not quite ready just yet to kind of go public with these things. But I've got some things going on that I'm looking forward to doing. I hope now that I am no longer I no longer have access to a travel budget, I won't be at quite as many events as I've been to in the past, but I will be out and about. And in fact, the reason I'm going to Chicago after our event next week is because I'll be at the CompTIA CCF event the beginning of the following. So I'll still be around, and I will get to see people and be seen by people. And I'll still be kind of in one capacity or another doing my thing. Like I hardly know what else I would do with myself if I wasn't just watching everything that's happening in this market and writing about it and talking about it and so on. So I'll still be doing that, just in a different kind of way, and I'll be able, hopefully, to kind of focus in on the pieces of that I love the most and I'm best at a little bit, in a way that is hard when you're the executive editor at Channel Pro. I would be remiss if I didn't say that, I said before, the couple of hours a week that we spend on the show are always the best 2 hours out of my week. And that is absolutely because of our guest hosts and our interview guests and the opportunity to talk about stuff that's happening in the news. But this is also our sort of 2 hours to hang out together every week. And sadly, we won't be doing that going forward. You're absolutely right. We will be friends forever. And I will absolutely, it's unthinkable to me that I won't make it out to your hometown at least once a year. That's just going to keep happening. And I hope to get you guys out here to Seattle sometime. So this is not like, the end of anything that matters for us, but it is, the end of our little chance to hang together, if only on Zoom for a couple of weeks. And I'll just miss that enormously. It's been so great, so wonderful, just being able to co-host this show with you.
I appreciate that. It's been a highlight for me as well. And we may not be able to spend 2 hours together on Zoom every week, but we'll definitely make it a chance personally to touch base here and there, and chit chat and just stay on top of what's going on with us. I think that'll be important to me going forward as well. Anything you'd like to say to our listeners and viewers before we wrap?
Just thank you. Thank you so much. Our audience was 0 when we recorded episode number 1. It is substantially larger than that now. You and I both know when we go out on the road that we will run into people who are fans of the show and say so. And so I just know that there are people out there who have gone on this multi-year journey with us for significant periods of time, and just thanks for being part of the show too, for listening and watching and telling your friends about it. Thanks to all of our guest hosts who are to a man and woman very, very busy people who carve out a couple of hours to be on the show with us. And it's we don't pay well, folks. So let's put it that way. we pay precisely nothing for that gig, but people have done it. They've been very, very generous with us, and So thanks to the guest hosts and the guest interviews, and thanks so much to the audience. And thanks to ChannelPro and everybody who's a part of it.
Wonderful. Well said. Big thanks to you. So to address the elephant in the room, because I'm sure all of our listeners and viewers are wondering, well, hey, what's going to happen to ChannelPro Weekly? I guess what the best way to answer that is I don't really know. I do know that we're going to take a hiatus on recording new episodes for a while. We will, with change comes change. I would very much like to keep ChannelPro Weekly going. It is my intent to keep ChannelPro Weekly going. But when it comes back, it's probably going to look a little bit different. It's going to sound a little bit different. Rich has absolutely kind of been one of the linchpins of the show. There's just no one more knowledgeable about the channel than him. He's a great interviewer. He is on the road. He's got all these contacts. With that kind of going, we'll have to rethink about what ChannelPro Weekly is. But it will come back. This is a thing that I like. So I want it to come back. I want it to keep going. It may be a little while. So folks, just out there, stay subscribed. So if you like to watch on YouTube, subscribe, hit the bell for new notifications, and as soon as we're back up and running, you'll get notified on that. If you're subscribed on your phone, just keep the episode subscribed in Spotify, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. Stay subscribed. We'll continue to use the same feed. So as soon as we have a new plan of how we want to go forward with ChannelPro Weekly, we will have new episodes, and you'll instantly be aware of it as soon as we are back up and running. How long will that be? I also don't know. It could be a few weeks. It could be a few months. We'll just have to see and reprioritize things and figure out how we want to do this going forward. So until then, I want to thank everyone for going on this journey with us and for being here. I'm not kidding myself that everybody's listened to every minute of every episode. I know that is not the case. But for those of you who've been listeners and subscribers, even part-time here or there, thank you for doing so. Thanks for being with us every week. And we will see all of you again. I will see all of you again, and who knows what it'll be then, but it'll be fun and it'll be good and it'll be ChannelPro Weekly. And I'm sure if possible, Rich is still gonna be out on the road, I bet we could get him on as a guest every now and then. If he was open to the idea of popping on for a short interview segment or something to come in and catch up with everybody. I bet he'd be open to that, wouldn't you, Rich?
Always, absolutely.
All right. And with that, we are going to wrap up this farewell episode to Rich and say goodbye. Folks, of course, go to channelpronetwork.com, subscribe, set it as your homepage. You're going to find all the information there about resources, articles, things to help you with your business. It's great content. Go there. It'll continue to have great content. Even from Mr. Freeman, so you'll be able to keep up to date on his writings. Of course, stay subscribed to the podcast. We will be back at some point. And if you want to know what's going on, just send me an email, podcast@channelpronetwork.com. We always want to hear from our listeners. And with that, we're going to say goodbye. Fun stuff. It's hard to say goodbye, Rich. It really is. But we'll be back, folks. Stay subscribed, and we will see everybody in the future. Take care.